Roast Magazine presents Industry Conversations, Episode 2, The Roast, Philosophy and Responsibility. Recorded live at the 2025 Specialty Coffee Expo, this series brings you conversations with coffee professionals from across the industry. In this episode, we explore the philosophies behind roasting and sourcing, how coffee professionals make thoughtful choices about what they buy, who they work with, and why it matters.
Describing my approach to roasting, I think it starts with understanding the green coffee. The way that I was taught was to just analyze the green coffee, and when you're getting the green coffee, you're not looking for a finished product, you're looking for potential. So sourcing coffee that has good potential, and I guess it's like putting in the time and effort to realize how to assess that potential. Once that coffee has that potential, then it's time to develop and figure out the coffee. A lot of the times, depending on the coffee company or what my focus is on the coffee, it's essentially trying to realize the concept of the coffee. So if a coffee is supposed to be sweet and floral or fruity, then I would approach roasting in a certain way. Or if it's supposed to be a holiday blend, it's supposed to have these nuances or a certain theme, then I would approach it a different way. And a lot of the times you would just be focusing on the roaster to bring out the inherent qualities of the coffee. So buying appropriately for what you're trying to achieve. The other thing is, again, knowing how to roast coffee to either accentuate sweetness, accentuate acidity. You're going for balance. And again, depending on what you're going for, you're going to approach things in a certain way. I think oftentimes it's good to sort of have a baseline profile that intimately, and then sort of start manipulating things from there.
A lot of people see it as this really romantic, artistic craft, which it can be. But at a certain point, when you're a production roaster, your job is to execute what your employers want you to, is to put out the coffee consistently to the way that either the green buyer or the QC lab, the way that they want it. And it can be, I think, it might not have the romantic sort of vibe, but it's important and it's what the customer expects. And I think, somebody has to do it, and I think it's kind of fun, because then you're shooting a dart at a target. And so you can do that well, or you can do that not well. So there's still challenge behind it.
I guess you could say that I'm classically trained, in that I came up with intelligentsia in the early aughts and learned to discriminate for lightness and brightness, and particularly to prefer washed coffees. So I've unfortunately kind of latched on to that as a default mode of evaluating coffees, and I've relearned over the last number of years that those are not the only good coffees in the world. And so I think one of the most important things for me when it comes to sourcing, there's a number of things, but when it comes to choosing a coffee based on flavor in a blind cupping, I surround myself with people who don't share all of the same opinions that I have. And we have a conversation about it. And we decide what we like about the coffee. And then we also talk about things that are valuable about the coffee that maybe aren't necessarily directly tied to flavor. So there's a lot that goes into it. Some of it has to do with price and volume, obviously, too. You can't really have a commercial conversation about buying a commodity without those two things. But maybe most importantly, I consider the relationship. So there are people that I've been buying coffee and interacting with personally for 15, 20 years now. And it's important for me to return and just have that same conversation in some cases every year. Are you guys interested in offering coffees to me? What do you have this year? Here's what we can pay. Here's what the volumes that I expect to be able to take. Conversations, transparency, and fairness in trade is one of the best ways to establish trust.
I think it's really important for everybody in the entire supply chain to recognize what their role is and how large or small it is. So I know when I'm traveling at Origin, I'll talk with producers and they'll bring up, oh, this person visited last week and they said we should be doing more of this type of coffee. And it's like, well, are they buying it? Because if they're not buying it, that may not be advice you need to take into account. So I just think we all fall in love with our own product. But it's important to recognize that it is just that. It's just our product and it may not be the way for everybody to do things. So the famous, a famous saying that I can't remember where I heard it first, but it's every bean has a home. So coffee producers are trying to they need to sell all the coffee and they need to find markets for it. So I think just being pragmatic about that approach and having open communication, being consistent with who you buy from, those are the communication and relationships are really the core to having a successful supply chain.
I would say productivity and making sure that coffee farming remains economically viable for families. As we've seen throughout this trade show and a lot of the data and the topics, there appears to be not enough coffee in the world today. And if you look at charts, absent countries like Brazil and Vietnam, almost every other coffee producing country the last 5 years is flat in their production. We have stopped our ability, or we're stuck in neutral in the engine. The engine is not revving properly to regain the productivity that we had before. So, but the reason for that is that there's no enough financial and economic incentive to do so. Plus, of course, other societal issues, climate change plays a role, migration, labor, again, and then this price instability, which is how growers see it. I mean, we use the elegant word volatility, but for a farmer, that's just simply income instability. And that's one of the big challenges to ensure that farmers have a viable economic income through coffee producing.
There are a lot of challenges here. I think something that we in specialty coffee run up against very often is sort of the commercial machine of the coffee industry. Like you can take the example of the C market, which we in specialty often reference or use as a benchmark, but we really have no control over that price point, and yet we still have to sort of work with that benchmark. That's a real challenge. I feel like folks in specialty often want to create a better industry. That's part of why we're in this industry, and we're constantly faced with the reality of this global international machine that has worked this way for hundreds of years and which will probably continue to work this way for some time. Because again, if we're looking for multi-year long-term relationships, both of these businesses need to survive and thrive and hopefully grow together. And the best way to achieve that is to make sure that we're checking in on needs, making sure that needs are met, making sure that we're aligned on growth and on business practices.
The whole thing about what's a fair price is really tricky because for a producer, a lot of times his cost of production is a feature of how much coffee he produces. So if he has a terrible crop, his cost of production shoots up, and it might be almost unrealistically high because his crop was so small. So it's very, very difficult to end up with the concept of what really is a fair. Then you've got the other factors of local currency, because in Colombia, I know intimately what the local price is. I know absolutely what it is, but it's in Colombian pesos per carga, which is a unit that nobody has any clue what that really is. Nobody, well, a few people, but not many. But the producer has a very good clue because he can go to the local village usually and actually get that price in his hand. So Colombia's system is not just about, if you like, having a fair price or a transparent price, it's the ability to get it. Because the other thing would be, it's happening a little bit now, if a country has no money in the internal market, no matter how high the market is, if there's no cash inside the country, then there's no way of paying. There's certain countries that's happening to now in a $4 market, that inside the country, there's no liquidity. So even though you think, oh, must be a windfall, it must be a bonanza, of course, in many cases it is, but not always, because you've still got to get money inside a country to pay the person who grew the coffee.
There's a beautiful humility in coffee farmers, but sometimes when you're trying to market yourself and communicate and sell something, that humility does not allow farmers to get the attention they deserve. I would say there's some classic problems with producers that have always been. There's access to finance. There's just not enough finance, and as coffee prices go up, there's more and more competition for finance. There's a lot of coffee out there, and roasters really know what they're doing, and they negotiate hard on price, and perhaps a lot of farmers don't know how good their coffee is. So they need to drink their coffees and understand what quality is. But many coffee producing countries are not coffee drinking countries. So it's this understanding of the value of what you have still is a little nascent.